Mike Johnson, good afternoon, sir. I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing good, man. You brought back some memories of Joe Kynes right there, saying that he needs to get him one of those internets. That's the first thing I thought about when you said call Nick Saban and tell him Twitter's down. It reminded me of Joe Kynes saying, "Well, I got to get me one of those internets."
Did he really say that?
Yeah, that was. I don't remember where he was, but if you look it up, you can find the video of Joe Kynes saying, "Boy, everybody's on that internet these days. I need to get me one of those internets." Absolutely hysterical.
Well, and poor old Nick Saban over here with this Twitter stuff. He's got to get the verbiage right, man. If he's going to be the cool guy, which he already is, he's got to get the verbiage right because he keeps making these mistakes on trying to, if you're going to go after LeBron James, man, you got to get your Twitter game up, and Nick Saban's got to get his Twitter game up.
Yeah, I heard his comment the other day on the Bama Cuts video where he says that, he can't even talk to Miss Siri. I thought that was pretty funny. To me, it kind of goes along with what you want to know about Nick Saban. Just kind of an old school just gunslinger. You don't want to. I wouldn't want my Nick Saban that well versed in Twitter, to be honest with you.
You're right. I mean, I'll say this: it's addicting. Like Twitter I don't know if you're like this, but it's like I have to check Twitter like at least once an hour or once every couple of hours, or I feel like I'm lost in the world.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. It just, I don't know. I honestly, Brian, I kind of take a little bit of point of pride that Nick Saban's not on Twitter. I look down at, Florida, Dan Mullen's playing dodgeball with, at the Student Rec Center. I just think back to, listen, that video, you know it as well as I do, where Bear Bryant's played in the stadium, and it said the same things win that always won. Nick Saban does the same things that Bear Bryant did. Tough physical team, good leadership, play week in and week out, and they always find their way into the winner's circle. Twitter or no Twitter, Nick Saban's going to find his way in the winner's circle. I love it.
All right. Now, is this the coach that you've played for? Listen to this. Because right now we have a very division in our country right now. Politics divide us. One side or the other, Republicans against Democrats, Democrats against Republicans, whatever. Nick Saban walks in a locker room, according to Ross Pierce-Baker, he says, hey, we're going to do this regardless of your political thoughts. We're going to just celebrate this as a team. It's an honor just to be able to say that you've gone to the White House is something that you can cherish forever. That's according to Ross Pierce-Baker. There was no debate. There was no saying, hey, we're not going. Nick Saban walks in, tells the team, we are going.
I think that sounds exactly like Nick Saban to me, to be honest with you. And I think that echoes what probably 99.9% of the players in the locker room were already feeling, that this is a team accomplishment. Listen, I was on one of those trips to the White House. I got to shake Barack Obama's hand. I got to hang out there, and no matter what your political beliefs are, it's special. I mean, you're meeting somebody that's going to go down in history as the leader of the free world, and I'm not shocked at all to hear those words be echoed out of Nick Saban's mouth. I think that he represents the football team well.
Mike, what was it like? I mean, share one of those stories of going to the White House and meeting the President of the United States and going through the Capitol and those sort of events.
It was I get chills talking about it. Obviously Barack Obama's the president at the time, and getting to go up there in the White House and listen, myself and Javier Arenas and Rolando were the captains, and Rolando didn't get a chance to make the trip, so they walk around the corner. They've got a helmet that says number 13 on it. They've got, the Barack Obama number 1 jersey. They hand that to me, and I'm sitting there going, oh, man, it's about to happen. I'm about to give Barack the jersey. He shakes my hand, incredibly nice guy, huge hands, tall. And then he kind of talks for a little bit. He addresses the crowd, and then he walks around and kind of small talks a couple of players in the crowd. Came right up to me, looked me dead in the face, and just started small talking with me. He said, what are you up to these days? Were you part of that NFL draft combine that I saw on TV? I got to watch a couple of hours on that on the plane the other day. And I said, yeah, I actually just got back from there not too long ago. It's one of those things we're hoping for the best in the draft, and, I hope you enjoyed it. And he said, I did. Best of luck to you in the draft, and I hope things turn out well. And it's one of those things that in the moment I didn't really think about, and then he walked off for a second. I thought, well, I just had a small conversation with the President of the United States. So that's kind of what I feel like Nick Saban's alluding to, that it's just one of those memories you're going to have where you get to talk to the President in the White House at a special presentation like that for your team, and I think it's a memory everybody should have.
Let me ask you about the philosophy, going back to the offensive line. We talk about this past weekend's first scrimmage. It was all about shuffling the offensive line, guards, tackles, guards, moving these guys around, trying to find the best 5. seems to be the Nick Saban trend. He likes those guys to play multiple positions on that offensive line.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely important in the spring. I've mentioned to you a couple of times on the show that I'm not as big on it in the fall, particularly once you get past that second scrimmage in the fall and you've got 2 weeks to go. It was a head scratch for me a couple of years ago when Bradley Bozeman got switched to center and Pierce Baker gets moved back to left guard, but a week before the season. I wasn't sure what to think. But right now, in terms of, listen, Matt Womack's out with injury. You're trying to find, who plays in the best 5 spots. I love what they've done. I love that you slide Cedric Wills over to get a little bit of right guard. Obviously he's comfortable on the right side, so it's not a huge change for him to where he can still kind of have the same communication. And just trial and error almost with a lot of these guys. What do they do best? Which arm has the better punch? Which one can they slide with? Who do they communicate with? Well, I love the fact that they're getting this done, and I love the fact that we're still in early April and that they're getting a chance to sort some of these things out.
Mike, when you look at around the SEC, let's go to the SEC East here for a couple of minutes. When you look at Georgia, who can challenge that team over in the SEC East, in your opinion, in 2018?
It's going to be tough. I don't think obviously that Georgia's got they've got the roster in the East that should be favored. Now I will say this: when you look at Georgia's crossover schedule, they might have the toughest crossover schedule in the entire SEC. They're going to play LSU down in Death Valley, and they got Auburn coming to their place to play them. So they're going to have a tough time in that crossover schedule, tougher than most teams will. But Tennessee's not there. They're not going to be there anytime soon. South Carolina, to me, is a little bit inflated. I think South Carolina last year went 6-1 in one-score games or something like that. I think that breaks back even. I'm not sure what you're getting out of that offense, particularly this year. Florida, to me, has a puncher's chance. I've got Florida going 8-4 this year. I'm not sure they've got the horses to be able to get it done here in year one under Dan Mullen. I think they've got probably the best puncher's chance in the East, though. But I got to be honest with you. If I'm a gambling man, I've got Georgia winning 11 games, and I've got somebody just sneaking up on them and biting them at some point.
What do you feel like is the biggest question for the Dogs?
I think it's going to be their secondary moving forward. They don't have a ton of questions. Now, I don't love their wide receiver core right now. I think that they've got some explosive playmakers, but they don't have the well-rounded wide receiver core that I think Alabama does. And it's going to be about leadership for them. It's not so much what you can get on the field. I think they've got talent at linebacker and at safety and some of these other places. But, boy, when you look at the guys that are headed to the draft, a ton of great leaders. Isaiah Wynn, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, Roquan Smith, Lorenzo Carter. Those are great leaders. And so who replaces them? Can they get their team to compete at that high of a level next year? If they can, though, there's not a lot of holes in that team. The offensive line is going to be strong again. Their running back stable is going to be strong again. I think their linebacking core and their front seven are good as well. So it's going to be an uphill battle to try to beat them.
Mike, over in the SEC West, not only are we spending some time talking Alabama, and I'll get your some thoughts there, let's go to Baton Rouge because you brought that team up a couple of minutes ago. We had a guest on a couple of days ago that we're talking about 6 to 7 wins for LSU, that it could really be that bad in Baton Rouge. Are you buying?
I think it could be. It's tough sledding for them because you look at their schedule and you say, boy, LSU should be able to beat Miami. No, they're not going to be favored in that game. Or, hey, LSU should really deal with Mississippi State. Well, guess what? Mississippi State beat them by 30 last year. So there's none of those games really for LSU anymore that you circle on the calendar and say, boy, that's a definite win. There's going to be, like I mentioned earlier for Georgia. Georgia's coming down to Baton Rouge. Georgia's going to be heavily favored in that game. Same thing with Alabama. So you've got to find some of those wins of games you should not win. Now, I think LSU is one of those teams that could be better than a lot of people think. I don't ever say this about quarterback competitions, but I think it would serve Ed Orgeron well to go ahead and name Miles Brennan the starter down there. But this isn't an LSU team that's going to be strong at offensive line or strong at running back. They're going to have to find different ways to do it. It's going to have to come from the wide receiver core. It's going to have to come from the defense gaining turnovers. And so this is not LSU of yesteryear. And they're going to struggle to get to that 7-8 win plateau. And Ed Orgeron, I think, at the end of the year is going to be, if not really completely engulfed in flames on the hot seat, I think that he's going to be coaching for his job come some of these games in November.
The Auburn Tigers are now hyping this defense, saying it could be one of the best in the country. Are you buying?
I am buying. Now, I don't know. I'm not buying it directly after Saturday. I think when you look at Saturday and what the quarterbacks for Auburn did, those backup guys, and Malik Willis and Joey Gatewood, it was horrendous. It was absolutely terrible. And now you're dealing with, an offensive line down there that's going to be a little bit patchwork to start. Both their centers are kind of down with injury. They're down a couple of wide receivers. Cam Martin didn't play at running back. Jared Stidham didn't play it. So I'm not buying it right after Saturday's scrimmage and saying, boy, these guys are going to be that dominant. But, I think this front seven unit has a chance to be very, very special. I think the Nick Coe showed the ability to kind of get after it. I think they love Big Cat Bryant and that role that Jeff Holland was playing last year, that buck linebacker. And consistency that's come under Kevin Steele, I think, will be a big deal for that unit. They have to find it still in the secondary, in my opinion. But the front seven for them still should be at least one of the top 3 units in the SEC.
Mike, we waited to the back end of the conversation just in case Nick is over listening to the game on Tide 102.9. We just wanted to make sure he was out on the practice field. We've got confirmation that he's now ran out from down that stairs and out that tunnel, and so he's out on the practice field. Mike, when you look at this 2018 schedule, if you're an Alabama fan, there's a lot of reason to be excited. I don't see a lot of challenges on this 2018 schedule, and I know we talked about this about a month ago, but as you look at the way spring football has kind of worked its way out, you begin looking at 2018, it's kind of hard to find some really big toss-up games. Am I just too much Bama in me or what?
Yeah, well, it's crazy, Ryan, that I felt that way. I feel like going on 10 years now. Every time the schedule comes out for them, I sit there and go, well, they should run the docket this. And it's hard because rarely do they ever get it done and go undefeated in the regular season. Now, it's happened a few times. I was around on a couple of those teams, and it was very difficult. So, I think you're going to look at an Auburn team that can still jump up and get you with Jared Stidham. I think you're going to look at maybe the most talented Mississippi State team you've seen in quite some time. I think that Ole Miss is one of those teams that always, gets the helmet bounces, gets the ball bounced off a shoulder pad and catches for an 80-yard touchdown. And I think Texas A&M's team, with the quarterback position they're going to have this year, they had a fighting chance last year against Alabama. So you mentioned it. Listen, I'm as big a homer as anybody. I don't look at the schedule and say, boy, this team's going to be tough or that team's going to be tough. Bama playing Bama's level should demolish everybody, especially with the way this offense could shape up to be. But just finding that consistency week in, week out, I think is going to be a tougher task than I'm imagining right now. And it's always an uphill battle. So those are the teams that that you don't ever expect. They can always jump up and get you. Bama hardly ever plays really that well on Saturdays down in Baton Rouge, so that's another one to look at. But as things sit right now, I would be shocked if it's not a 12-0 Bama team going into the next title game.
Mike, I want to walk you back to about 12 years ago, spring of 2007, when you walked in A-Day and they literally had to lock the gates because there was too many fans going inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. The fire marshal had to lock the gates, and we're all locked in watching Nick Saban's inaugural kind of performance there. What was that like as walking in a player in a spring game in a packed house, and we set records and sort of set the standard that spring games around college football?
Yeah, it was quite an incredible sight. It was an incredible experience. I had not yet started a game yet. And so Nick Saban kind of knew at that point that I was going to be a viable option, and he was kind of doing what we talked about earlier, mixing and matching me on the offensive line. I was going to play a little right guard, play a little right tackle, play a little left guard. And I distinctly remember standing on the sidelines with John Parker Wilson of that game, and we kind of looked up at the top. We didn't expect the lower bowl to be all full. I don't know that anybody did. Well, then you look up, and they had just opened up the upper deck on the opposing sideline, and people are sprinting across the upper deck to make sure they get their good seat out on one end. I mean, people are running around the concourse, running around the spiral staircase up there to get their seat. And, we're kicking this thing off, and I kept thinking, no way this thing's going to fill up. No way it's going to fill up. And then sure enough, 10, 15 minutes later, we're dealing with a capacity crowd. And that was just such an amazing sight for so many people involved with that football team. I know you felt the same way, that, this really is a new day in Alabama football and here in Tuscaloosa. And I think that it's crazy to see where that program's come since then, but if there ever was a precursor for what Nick Saban's done, it was that Saturday for A-Day.
You think it kick-started the program, the dynasty?
I think it definitely did. I think it kind of unleashed what everybody knew Alabama football was historically, got them back on track. I mean, it made people kind of stand up and say, you know what, this still is Alabama. This is, we've been down for a while, but this still is Alabama football. It's still a special place, still the best fans in college football, and this is where they deserve to be, with a full stadium on a Saturday in April.
Mike Johnson, he's part of SEC Country Facebook Live daily. You can find it right there in the main Facebook account for SEC Country. Read his work, secountry.com. Former All-American at the University of Alabama. As always, Mike, thank you again for being a part of the show, and I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Ryan. Roll Tide, brother.